he remembers going to the diner with his grandpa, and his grandpa getting coffee, and asking for leaded or unleaded, caffeinated or non-caffeinated. And he remembers that, and that became part of who he was, like hanging out with his grandpa, being in the garage, driving with his dad, racing pigeons, doing things like that, and these blue-collar jobs. Mike is an excellent graphic designer, and still does a lot of graphic design in the position that he's in today. He's an associate dean, and is currently working as the associate dean and also the department chair, because they had turnover, and so he's kind of doing two jobs right now. He's extremely busy academically and still finds time, not as much as he would like to make pots and to make work. He dabbles in sculpture and does some sculpture. This is a larger sculpture, probably, does it have the dimensions up there? This is pretty big. This is maybe 2 feet, 2.5 feet long, and this is the industrial complex, and this is a piece that was kind of inspired by Dwight Eisenhower's speech on the military industrial complex. So in these slip cast porcelain cups that he slip cast is motor oil. So it's this motor oil, it's the motor oil going in, and the bullets coming out, or the bullets coming in, and the motor oil coming out. This was, I don't know if this is dated, but this is the time when there was a lot of upheaval in the Middle East, not like there isn't today, but there was a lot of that, and a lot of talk about oil, and a lot of talk about war, and a lot of talk about consumerism and what we're doing. He said during the opening, people would dip their finger in that liquid to see what it was. And it smelled like oil, but I don't know if people believed it, so they'd stick their finger in. They said you could tell who had dipped their finger in the oil because they were walking around like this during the gallery. Nowhere to wipe the oil. All right, here's another one. These are larger. I think you can kind of see how kind of large these would be. So he's fabricating steel, and this is about corn and about ethanol, and using different types of firing processes, different temperatures, casting concrete, found objects, finding these big bags of corn. And Mike loved that graphic design label. He was going to design a label to put on that bag and make his own bags. And he was in the feed shop in Valdosta, and he saw these bags, and he said, "That's it, right there. I'm just going to buy it." Found object. So it's a great piece. Some more pieces here, and I wish Mike were here to explain the concept of these and the content, but I think you can understand a little bit. This piece, I believe, had kaolin or sand. I think this is a kaolin cup, right? Found object cup that he's put this decal on that he designed, and then this cup filled with sand, this igloo cooler here, and then the sand to the left. These are some of his pieces that he did for his graduate thesis exhibition, and Mike was making pottery for 2 years of his time in graduate school, and the third year switched gears completely and started to work figuratively for his last year in his thesis exhibition, just because why not, right? So this is some of the stuff that he was making. This piece lives in my living room. And he was prolific. He made, I don't know, he probably made 25 sculptures. All right, Brian, that's it. That's Mike's work.
All right, I'm back. All right, I'm going to talk about my work. I mean, we're trying to go pretty quick, and I can dig a lot deeper, but I thought I'd give you just kind of the greatest hits or something. Let's see, yeah. So at the first of this, I'm just going to hit some pieces that I think are kind of key to me. One of my, let's say, strengths and weaknesses is that I have a tendency to jump around and kind of pursue whatever thing kind of catches my interest in ceramics and kind of pursue that until I feel like it's done, and then I kind of move on to the next thing. This came from a body of work that I did, I don't know, quite a few years ago, maybe 15 to 20 years ago, and it was kind of based on the idea of storage. I was making a lot of different kind of vessels that were storing different things that were supposed things that we store, and we store a lot of weird things. Obviously, you know, pots are meant to, in most cases, to store food and, you know, who knows what else. But I kind of was interested in the idea of what we really store. By the time I got done with this body of work, all the kind of imagery and the icons I was using all were kind of based in the fact that I felt like everything was digitally stored. And so I don't know if any of these things would represent the last of this body of work, but well, maybe I should. I got to a point where that body of work, I thought it was okay, and it was doing all. I thought it was doing all right, but I had a student come by and look at a whole grouping of these pieces, and they had kind of transformed into like, they were architectural in a lot of ways. And the student said, "Hey, that looks like a Tim Burton Christmas village," is what the student said. And I looked over and I thought, yeah, you're right. It does look like Tim Burton Christmas Village, and that was the last day I made that stuff. So I moved on, and I kind of jump around. I did a lot of crystalline glazes. I mean, I did these crystalline glazes for like 20 years. I'm over those, and they're great. But I mean, for me, I think what I'm finding about myself is that I enjoy the hunt. I like to like figure things out, and once I feel like I've kind of figured it out, I've accomplished that, and I'm ready to figure something else out. So, over COVID, I decided to set aside a little time and pursue something I dabbled in before, and that is these luster glazes. And so I made some luster pots for a while, and they're, you know, they are. I make a lot of kind of straightforward pots. I like, you know, porcelain and stoneware and glazes and high fire reduction. Sometimes I don't know, it's a little side project. I made these weird little sculptures for a while. And I, you know, they're all fun. But yeah, these guys are fun. Anyway, the current work I'm doing now and the work that's over at the vendor's booth, I've always enjoyed Chino glazes. It was one of the first glazes I saw as a student, and I thought, that's what I want to do. And I take a little ribbing from one of my colleagues, because I asked my teacher at the time if he would help me make up some, I said Shino glazes, and he corrected me, and he has been teasing me about that for years and years. So anyway, I know it says Shino, and I do right now. I'm kind of pushing these Shinos as far as I can, and trying to figure out, you know, what these may be and things. Right now, I'm kind of coloring these Shinos, trying to get a rainbow of Shino color. And there's pink Shino, and that's all. Shane, you're up. We're running out of time.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay. So, it's my turn. I'm a little like Brian, but not, you know, I kind of stick to it longer. Currently, my work is very different than this. This is actually a mid-range soda fire piece, and it's kind of related to what I'm doing. I started off as, I always wanted to be a functional potter, and I wanted to make pots, and I was always excited about salt and soda, and I like wood. But in graduate school, I pretty much focused on soda firing, and so when I was able to first build I was teaching at Western Texas College, I built a soda kiln. We had a brick plant nearby, and I was able to make a trade with the brick plant for the university. I told the brick plant I'd let them fire. They were trying to restart this brick plant. They had a couple of beehive kilns. I told them they could use the kiln to test their clay, and if they would give me the fire brick that's in the beehive kiln. So I basically had my way with the beehive kiln and took out quite a bit of fire brick, made a soda kiln, and it's really the interest that I had in graduate school. And then I continued that when I moved to Utah, and I started to just a little bit about my background with this, because I think it affects my work. I was teaching at Western Texas College, and I was completely happy with my job. I loved my job. I loved the area. I loved the colleagues. And I came out here to SUU when I had that lecture, you know, and I told Brent, I said, oh man, I miss this place. I'd do anything to get back here. And I shouldn't have said that, because at the Denver and Sika, Brian says, hey, there's an opening at Snow Canyon High School. I said, I've never wanted to teach high school. I don't want to teach high school. And he's like, what? Well, you told me if you do anything to get back to Southern Utah. And I'm like, well, that's not what I want to do. And so I made the mistake of going home, and I told my wife, hey, Brian told me there's an opening at Snow Canyon High School, but I'm not applying for that because I want to teach at the university or college level. And she's like, what? And so we discussed it, and she thought it was the best thing, my thing to apply for this job. And actually, it was a great experience for me. I didn't have a teaching license or anything at the time, but I applied, I got the position. I left Texas, and my colleagues in Texas were like, are you crazy? You're going the wrong way on the ladder. And I said, well, anyways, and I fully expected to maybe teach at the high school the rest of my career. I didn't know. I had a great experience there. I did almost throw up when I walked into the high school the first day of class. I was like, what did I just do? Oh no. Anyways, with that agreement was the agreement that I would withdraw my retirement from Texas and build a studio. Because I thought that was important. I said, I can teach high school the rest of my life if I have a studio. So this is work that I was really interested in at the time. This is from St. George, but I built a cross-fired soda kiln. And the great thing about this kiln, based off of one that Mike Schmidt built at Valdosta State University. And this is all side-fired on the bottom shelf. And the bottom shelf is very active in this kiln. I still have the kiln, and I still fire in it. And as a matter of fact, the other piece was fired in there as well, but it is mid-range. So this is kind of the work I was thinking about, functional wear that's mid-range. Did you have a question over there? Did somebody have a question? I thought somebody raised their hand. This soda fire work, and I love this work. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of was exciting to me, and then I changed. Maybe it's because I'm around Brian a lot. I don't know, but I went completely opposite of high fire soda. I had an opportunity to go to South Korea in 2010 to demonstrate and be a presenter at the International Ongi Expo in Ulsan, South Korea. And one of the requirements for the show they had is that it was ongi is it's not really an earthenware, but it is a lower temperature generally technique with functional wear. And so I was required to do earthenware. So I started to experiment with around the 04 range. And so this piece is kind of what I was doing. And at the time I wasn't putting decals on it, but I thought the decals would suit it. So because of the low temperature. So this is earthenware with a Maiolica liner glaze, vitreous engobes on the outside with some low fire commercial glaze and a thing, and a decal thing. But to me it was a lot more than that. That's an image of I was using images from my family and my past. This is a picture of my mother's father on a horse, and I kind of wanted to, I don't want to go into detail about the images, but I wanted to kind of represent America, Americana, just the way that my family grew up on both sides of my family. So anyways, that kind of took me in a different phase, and that's where these were. Around the time that my mother passed away, I don't know, when you lose somebody, a family member, sometimes you start thinking, and it even came stronger to me to create this work. But this is about my dad, actually, where I kind of brought it up by my dad. I call that Grand Champion. It's a large platter, and it's built in a loose ongi technique, which is kind of an influence from that Korean experience. And this is also this one's a little different. This is high fire stoneware with a Shino glaze, and then multiple firings down from cone 10 all the way down to 08. And each layer is a different temperature to create that. So it was kind of experimental, and then I was doing it on soda fire, and well, that's my grandfather in his basketball uniform in 1920. So I kind of enjoyed it. And then then with this imagery, I kind of started to think about other things, and this series it continued. This is about local things, about native and invasive species or something like that. And this is the Virgin River chub, which is only found from Zion National Park to Mesquite, Nevada, right where it goes into Lake Mead. It was a common fish that was used for consumption from the native people all the way to the pioneers and so forth. And now it's it used to go all the way to the Gulf of Mexico and then into the Sea of Cortez, the Colorado River, and now it's trapped in this small section of river. But and likewise, this was kind of along the same lines using the soda kiln, but that's the flannel mouth sucker, which is considered a trash fish for many, but it's a very unique species that lives only in southern Utah and eastern Nevada, and it's a native species. But maybe on the current work, sometimes you get tired of things and you change, and I still like that. I still do soda firing and stuff, but I started, I had a little COVID experience like Brian. He went into Luster's, which is way more complex, but I kind of thought about what do I want to do now that I have tenure at Dixie State University, what do I want to do with my work, how long do I want to work in this fashion, and so I decided to kind of embrace some of I was trying to do some of these things at low fire, but they weren't really working the way I wanted, so I went to mid-range for the surfaces that I could create. I don't know if you guys, well, you might know this, but a satin is a really hard glaze to get at cone 10. It's also a hard glaze to get at low fire, but at mid-range it seems like it's readily available. So I started to experiment with satins, eggshell surfaces, and also slips, and maybe a distressed look. And so this is my I call it my COVID research, but it was basically slips, different glazes, and a mid-range temperature. And there's some Unomis that I made that are those different colors. You can see that in my work in the cell, and here's some like ice cream bowls and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't even have my current work documented, but it's kind of exciting to me. The other thing that's exciting about this work is I can still do it in that soda atmosphere at a mid-range temperature, and I still have a result that I really love. So anyways, that's a little bit about my work. I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Before I'm going to finish up and then with my work, and then if there's, well, we're willing to stay and to talk or whatever and answer questions. I know this has kind of gone fast through some of this. Before I do, I just want to, on behalf of the group, really thank Joey and Emily, the boss, and for the invitation and for being able to do this and to have an experience like this again. Isn't it so great to be able to meet together finally and to do this again and to get together and to be able to talk and to teach and to learn and to have this experience. So we're so grateful for the invite, and hopefully, things are going to be more of this going forward. Let's hope, right? So a little bit about me. I grew up in Utah, Brigham City, the northern part of the state, small town, one high school town, and the neighboring town over was the rival high school. So you know the drill, right? And it was rural. There's a lot of agriculture around me, and the town was formed when the railroad came through. It's right Promontory Point, where they drove the Golden Spike, is right outside of my hometown, and really a great little place to grow up. So I stumbled onto ceramics late in my senior year of high school and went to school to be a ceramics major and put all my eggs in one basket. I'm going to click through some slides of inspiration. After graduate school and studying at Southern Utah University and meeting these guys, decided to go to graduate school at Edinboro University of Pennsylvania. Shane was just leaving, and I spent one part of a summer semester with him building the salt kiln. I came out early and was in the class, and Shane was just finishing up in the class, and I loaded him up in his U-Haul, and he took off to Texas, and then I was there for a year before Brian came out. Coincidentally, Brian, this is how good of a friend Brian is. He and his wife and his two kids, who were 5 and 3 at the time, no, not even 4 and 2.
3 and 1.
Yeah, they were young babies, and he and his wife and their babies drove my wife and Heather and I across the country to Edinburgh, and we saw Shane's thesis exhibition, and it was awesome to see that, and to see the growth that he had made in 3 years. We couldn't believe it. And I mean, he was good before he left, but it was amazing, that jump that he had made. And I was excited to start, and I put Brian on a bus, and he, with his small family and his wife, took the Greyhound bus, 2,700 miles back to his home. So talk about friendship, right?
Wow.
I mean, what a great friend to be able to do that. I know, right? And it's like that, the bond that you have with people and the opportunity to be able to work with them and to be friends with them is an opportunity that I have thoroughly enjoyed and continue to enjoy with these guys. So this is the building that's right outside of the studio in Edinburgh. Tons of barns that are inspiring to me. This agriculture that I'd grown up with was even more in Pennsylvania and Western New York. And I drove the country and for thousands and thousands of miles really, and took hundreds and hundreds of images I brought a film camera, and took slide film. You remember that? And I took hundreds of pictures for research for one of my classes with Professor Johnson. He wanted us to focus on something, and so I thought, well, I'm really inspired by this. I'm gonna document the heck out of this. I'm gonna go find what I really like and the forms that I enjoy seeing. And so drove around and took tons of images and pictures, and I have a lot of them, and I'll just click through a few that I used to drive by probably daily, multiple times a week for sure. This one I stopped at a few times trying to find who lived in this beautiful old barn. And these beautiful cupolas and the salt-fired block. You can see on the left side of this salt-fired block silo. So I love that. Here's another great, huge barn over the hill in Corey, Pennsylvania, just a town over away. This beautiful barn, and this is a massive barn. It's probably 5,000 square feet on each level. Huge, what I assume is a dairy barn. This is just right up the hill from the university. And this stuff started to directly influence my work and my making. So this idea of making functional vessels, but with a sculptural influence, and making sculptural functional objects, right? So this is a lidded jar. It's a double lidded jar. The cupola, or this top part, might look like a cupola of a building, right, like this, or it might look like a building in a furrowed field. And these handles there's two handles on each side, and they reference plow discs. So it looks like a plowed or a furrowed field. And my work starts to take on this duality of not only vessel but sculpture, and also this idea here of maybe a field or a building in a field or a silo or something like that. So ideas of containment. Start thinking about what are architectural buildings, what are corn cribs, what are these things we can go into or can use. And so my work I start to think a lot about containment as it relates to function and why we do what we do. Decorating pieces with corrugated metal or corrugated fiberglass. This is a double oval, wheel-thrown, double-lidded jar. So it's thrown on the wheel, altered, slabs, closed forms are put, and both of those little two silo pieces come out. You'd never use this as a lidded jar. This is really, but you could. I mean, it would be very difficult. I'm not sure what you would put in it, but it's very sculptural, right? But it was meaning for me to be able to mostly make these functional, and I was pressed by my professors. Why do they even need to be functional at all then? Why do they need to be a vessel, right? And I got all the questions, and for me it came back to, I am a potter. I was raised as a potter, in my my education. I love that. I like making pots, and I like making things that you can use. I worked in Erie, Pennsylvania, all throughout graduate school, and drove the industrial streets to get to the clay space where I taught. So I would see things like this, and see signage and directional arrows, and on the sides of buildings, and this directly influenced me. I parked right next to this spot, and one day I looked at these numbers and said, I need to put numbers on the sides of my pieces. It just makes sense. And these two numbers were just there. I don't know, they weren't really, they were next to this bricked up window, but the bricked up window was bricked up, and then they painted the 2 over the top of that one. So, but anyway, this started to become a really graphic element of my work and ideas of just decoration. So here's like an altered piece, it's a butter dish with salt and pepper shaker. It's a salt and pepper shaker rest, with a butter dish in it. So my friend called this the butter morgue, right? So it's like, you can put this on your table, or you can pull the butter out and put it in your fridge if you're one of those people. All right, so this idea of this being special or different than you might normally have, or being maybe ceremonial, or maybe a little bit sacred, or something that you might use when your best friends come over, right? Or for special occasions. This is a Kohler building in Erie, Pennsylvania, which they tore down. That's terrible. This is a creamer, sugar, and pepper and salt. It's a condiment stack. So it's interactive, right? So you can use this. This can now live on the landscape of your table or on your countertop and becomes sculpture, it's beautiful, and hopefully you can then engage with it during special times, or maybe every day, past the condiment stack and use that as creamer or whatever. So these pieces are these are soda fired works. I didn't mention that my graduate research was all salt and soda. Did some atmospheric wood firing, but mostly salt and soda. These are, lidded jars, and they break down here, and they have a basket inside. So, it'd be pretty fun to take this to your next potluck, right? Like, I don't know what you put in this, but it's pretty cool, right? You take the lid off, and then there's a basket, and then under the basket there's something else, right? But I like that. And so you can see a lot of embellishments of arrows, signage, piping, things like that. You can see this little on the left on the blue. There's like, little blue swatches. That's like a little dangle that dangles and moves back and forth. I think there's like a little number printed underneath. So you have to move it away to see the number. So with my work, I want to encourage people to examine it as they use it and to enjoy it while they're doing it. Okay, wood-fired work. For the last probably decade, I've been doing reduction cooled wood firing at the university that I'm at. We have a number of wood kilns and really like the idea of the way my work looks more industrial. And that's been a big influence throughout my ceramic career. And so here's just a teapot on the base. This is an oval serving trough. So this slab is draped in here at the top. So it's shallow. It would be really nice to serve a big mound of guacamole out of that, right? It makes sense, right? Yeah.
What are the metal pieces on?
Yeah, this high temperature wire. It's the same wire that your element in your kiln is made out of. Nichrome wire, and it's put in when the piece is leather hard, and then it just is fired in. Yeah. So you wouldn't put this in the microwave, but you wouldn't put it in the microwave anyway. Okay, so. Teapot stacked here with saucers and cups and so the wood firing, reduction cooled wood firing process, you can see the wood ash deposit, and where the pieces are in the kiln makes a lot of difference when you're atmospheric firing, right? And when you're reduction cooling and there's some reoxidation happening in the kiln, you'll get that iron oxide color. So you'll get it to go back to iron oxide. So sometimes if it's really reduction cooled and the oxygen is reduced around the piece, then it goes darker black. That's the reduction of the oxygen, right? And so you'll get it to go really black. So you can see sometimes these pieces are dark, black, sometimes they're shiny, sometimes they're matte, sometimes they're covered in ash, sometimes they're not, depending upon where they're at. This is a double-lidded jar. Looks like a silo or a water tower or something like that. You take off the top lid and there's another lid underneath it. It's kind of just a bonus, right? This is a triangular bottle with a cork kickstand. So, you can, as you're pouring that, you don't want the cork to dangle around. It's got a little kickstand. all will thrown. These are all will thrown in an altar. This is just a double lidded jar. So the lid is the lid, is the lid, is the lid, right? So picture. And you can see can you see the arrow in there?
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff sometimes that I'm making can get obscured, but I like the fact that sometimes it's not always seen perfectly. That graphic symbol has been worn away or covered up or like time, right? So my pieces, I purposely wanted them, when I started atmospheric firing, I utilized the atmospheric firing to give this antiquated look, to strive for that, right? Where I'm loading the kiln, how I'm loading that, where I'm putting the pieces in. So side handle teapot. Okay, so teapot's here. So this is a diamond-shaped bottle. I've been doing this a lot lately. There's planes on these diamonds. Really nice to catch the atmosphere on parts of them. There's a good example of the double-lidded jar, kind of with this handle. It's got the lid underneath the lid. And good idea of kind of, I won't call it sides, I won't call it front and back, but also, we could say front and back, I guess, something like that, right? So what the different results of wood firing can show. Same here, same bottle. This just came out of the last firing. These next few are just brand new. Just photographed them. And this is brand new. I just made, this is brand new work for me. This is the first one I made, just sketched it out, and just made one in the workshop today, or workshop 2 days ago at Dixie State. So it's like the third one I've made. So these are all new. Put them in the last wood kiln and got some really great results. And wedging 16 mesh silica sand into my clay to really give it some nice atmospheric marks and some nice texture there. So, this is a double-lidded jar with a smokestack base. This is a teapot with a lidded jar storage base underneath, so you can store your tea underneath there or something like that. A double-lidded jar. This is larger, and you can serve a lot of rice and beans out of that sucker. These are those diamond bases, and I think you can see kind of like how those quadrants on the diamond really can be broken up by the atmosphere and the flame carrying through the kiln. This square teapot, just love that really rich, luscious, soft surface from the wood ash and the iron. And then just been pinching these like trough-like forms. And just pinch this. Like with my students when I'm teaching pinching, I'm like, let's pinch something that's not a bowl, right? So we call it a vessel. We do pinch vessels, open, just adding these big chunky feet on it. And here we are at the Golden Spike National Monument, where they drove the Golden Spike. Anyway, we're right just at 7:02, and you might have a question or two, but